Good morning, business students. So I was reading this press release this morning. You can download this from HSBC's website. There's a small article on the Financial Times today as well. I'm sure it will be in the Times tomorrow. Very interesting that HSBC are selling off their Argentine business. They're exiting the country. I initially thought, this is an opportunity to talk about retrenchment, but I don't think it is that actually. They're not retrenching their business because of something going wrong. This is probably more of a product portfolio type question. If we wanted to use Boston Matrix, for example, I think we could get away with it quite easily. We could look on Argentina from a HSB perspective as that possible question mark because of the volatility. Maybe they need to throw money at it to make it more profitable in the future, but because of things like inflation and economic stability or lack of it, maybe they've decided to exit it. So they've sold that part of the company off for $500 million, which sounds a lot of money, but the article also mentions that they forecast that selling it will cost them $1 billion. So we'll see that come off of their balance sheet for next year. So when I was looking at this, I thought this is a great opportunity to revise Porter's strategic matrix. Now, there are posters and websites out there that call this Porter's generic strategies. They're both correct. However, in the A-level standards, it is definitely called Porter's generic matrix. So if we get another question on this, that's what it's going to be called. Last time we had this type of question in an exam paper, some students got it confused with Ansof's matrix. They are totally different. So don't make that mistake is my top tip for today. So we'll use the knowledge. So that means we've got to look at the case study, identify any elements from cost leadership, differentiation, or the two different types of focus. And we'll go through the model briefly in a second. It's a great article. You should read about this and think about how it links into other business theories. So here is the question again, using your knowledge. So we're going to make sure we've got a good definition of that when we come to writing it. Assess the likely reasons, first part of the hook, obviously. Behind, or for, HSBC's decision to sell its Argentina business to this company, 10 marks. So because it's assessed the likely reasons and it's a 10 marker, it's a nice 10 marker, so we can do a positive reason, a negative reason. Overall, this is probably the main reason, and then we're going to justify in context. There's no answer in this video, but there is a mark scheme at the end of the video, so I advise you to write your own, use the mark scheme, and remember the mark scheme is not the only potential answer for this, but it's an indication. So, briefly going over Porter's generic matrix, strategic matrix. I'm getting confused with the different terms myself. Remember, I won't draw it, but in the middle of this, we could get those lost in the middle companies. We talk about Tesco's sometimes, even though they're highly successful, they try to be broad and narrow in different parts of their business and depending which country they were or are in. Okay, so you imagine in the UK, we could call this narrow niche and this broad mass markets to help us understand these key terms in context with others. So when Tesco's are very much mass market with a bit of broad appeal here, we can see that might work well in an established market like the UK. When they go into another country, brand new to that country, like they did with China, they were sort of lost in the middle, didn't really stand for anything, and that's probably one of the reasons they didn't do so well. Okay, so when we go to the case study, we need to look for, are we looking for cost leadership, as in they're trying to lower their costs to possibly help them with a business objective, and I'll put up the classic definition that leads to lowering prices in a mass market. that's the problem sometimes, is if that aim is not in the case study and you just default to that because it's all exciting to lower prices, because we remember the supply and demand diagram, that's not going to be in context. So go very careful with those generic terms. Differentiation is obviously standing out in a competitive marketplace to help you achieve an aim. There's a lovely aim in the case study. And then we could be focusing on either a specific, in this case, high value, potential high profit market segment, or it could be that we're going to focus on costs. There's nothing really in the case study that focuses on these. However, we will explore the definition for cost leadership in context, but there's probably good evidence for this. Okay, so looking at the case study, we can see it's huge. 3 short paragraphs, lots of information. Your job is to go into this case study and identify something to do with one of these 3 areas. Remember, focus is one area, but in 2 different areas. Okay, so have a look. Pause the video, read through, think about the definitions of cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. Did you pause the video? I don't think so. So, looking at cost leadership, here is a rough textbook definition of cost leadership. Now, there's no evidence in the case study that says that they want to lower costs. They want to be the lowest cost producer so they can basically compete on prices. Now remember, if it doesn't say about prices in the case study, don't just leap to that. This is the one that students tend to remember. Differentiation is quite exciting. So we need to make sure that it's in context. Now, it doesn't directly align with cost leadership, which is what I've had here, but divesting, as in selling off their Argentine bank for $500 million. Yes, they could reallocate those resources elsewhere to help them to reduce costs. I'm guessing that that bank is losing them money in Argentina at the moment, which is why they're willing to take another 1 billion loss on this to get out of it before it costs them even more money than that. So in some ways this could be a bit of cost leadership, but it's not the second part of the definition, which is leading to competitive prices. Unless they have to. Banks at the moment are making a lot of money, and HSBC is just like the other banks. They're making a lot of money at the moment, and there's no real evidence in the case study. If anything, there's counter evidence to it because they're focusing on those high value opportunities. Okay, so this makes me think that it's not so much focused on the lowest prices. This could be to maximize profit margins. Okay, so we could sort of talk about cost leadership as long as we link it to something in the case study which isn't lowering prices. So go careful. So differentiation, we're thinking about creating that unique product or service, and there is evidence of that. So this is the premium prices we see down here. So it's more about differentiation, really. And here is a little bit of an interpretation of the case study. So focus strategy, and it's a bit of both. Maybe thinking about the mass market, that might be the retail banks where me or you might go in and open ourselves a current account up. It might be that the business bank arm, it might be the more niche investment funds, for example. So we've got a broad church of product portfolio with companies like HSBC. It's not just a bank, and neither is any bank, but it's not just a bank. Okay, so don't just treat it as one entity. Think about it as that product portfolio company. So here's some interpretation, and I've also mentioned some other things that aren't in this case study but are in the longer article from HSBC's website. So clearly, they can exit an underperforming Argentine market, and maybe use that money or resource to focus on Mexico and the USA, who seem to be a lot more profitable. Okay, this is definitely a Boston Matrix question if you want to reframe it and approach this from revising Boston Matrix. So here's the marking grid. You know what your targets are. Your target is to get to level 4, not perfection. Here's a reminder of the diagram, and please remember that lost in the middle, not that it's appropriate for this case study, and just a quick reminder, using your knowledge, so not just a definition, but using your knowledge, assess the likely reasons. Okay, starting our hook. Behind this, so of the decision, yeah, we're thinking about the motives of HSBC. Okay, so we haven't got the motives or aims and objectives of HSBC in the question, so we need to basically go to the case study to find those, and we can see that they want to focus on higher profit margin opportunities. So the mark scheme is there. Roughly, I've put in brackets to remind you about the importance of making sure that you link all of your points to the language of Porter's strategic matrix or Porter's generic strategy. Just remember that's not Ansoff. And there you go. Hope you enjoy it. Have fun with the essay. If you're any of my students, then feel free to write your answer, mark it yourself, EBIs, what went wells, and then email it to me and I will double mark it for you. Have a good day.